This was certainly an interesting episode, wasn't it? Princess Quasar Caterpillar and the something, it doesn't really matter, is the first Ludo episode of the season, and I already forgot in a previous review that the Ludo episodes were a thing in the first place, and I'm even, like, doubly upset about that now, because, man, watching this episode has reminded me of how much I love to see this little guy getting his life together. We see at the start of the episode, in some far-flung alternate dimension, a group of XPs for the main cast of the show, led by Princess Quasar Caterpillar from the title of the episode, are reenacting a scene from Bon Bon the Birthday Clown, though slightly different. And Ludo appears in this scene in the same capacity that he did in that scene from Bon Bon the Birthday Clown. And he attempts to seize Quasar Caterpillar's magic wand, even though she doesn't have one. She has a magic bell instead of a magic wand. And it's realizing this that it causes Ludo to recognize that he's just fallen back on old habits. He's gone back to his old villainous magic-seeking ways, and that this isn't what he needs to do to move on, confirming that Ludo really is trying to take Dennis's advice and actually move on with his life and improve things for himself. When Ludo then returns to the human dimension, it's fitting that he finds Dennis, who takes him to Ludo's old castle, their family's ancestral castle, because Dennis has managed to acquire it and is trying to turn it into a home for the two of them. Being in the castle surrounded by a bunch of monster workers, though, some of whom Ludo used to employ as his henchmen, once again causes Ludo to start scheming against the royal family. He learns a bunch of stuff about the goings-on in the human kingdom that he didn't know about up until now, and even forms a pretty decent plan to get the wand. But Dennis shows up in time to convince him not to. They're treating it almost like an addiction that Ludo is trying to recover from, which was an interesting angle. They don't delve too deeply into it, but it was still an interesting angle for the episode to take. It's about here, though, that we learn that Dennis was actually scammed by the guy who sold him the castle, that this literal rat person tricked Dennis into signing a contract where once work is done on the castle, it'll just default back to him and Dennis won't actually get it. Or something along those lines. It's not really important what the specifics were. What is important is that Dennis doesn't own the castle, and therefore he and Ludo don't get to live there and be a family. And so, in an interesting twist, what Ludo does is he takes his bird and his spider friends, and he suits back up as villain Ludo, and goes and confronts this guy, and it's implied that he tortures him too, but the dude didn't really seem to have that much fortitude. I would imagine that the threat of torture was enough to get him to do what Ludo wanted. But in short, he uses his skills that he developed as first a villain and then as a survivalist to get this guy to sign over the deed properly, and now the castle actually belongs to them, and Ludo brings in a bunch of his other siblings to help rebuild the castle rather than hired workers, and now they're all just kind of living there together, and it's fantastic. Like, especially from the perspective of someone like me who wants Ludo to be allies with Star and Marco by the end of the show, if not, like, straight up friends with them. Seeing him move past his grudge with them so thoroughly, and then find a new way to apply the skills that he learned working against them for so long, a way to apply those skills in a more positive way, I'm happy to see all of that happen. Like, I don't think this is the strongest Ludo episode or anything, but it's definitely a really good episode, and man, this is probably the healthiest we've ever seen Ludo look, and seeing his family around and seeing him spend so much time with Dennis, the end where the two of them start playing basketball together. I'm just so glad that this guy, who was victimized his entire life and took so many wrong turns because of that, is getting things in order so well. He's doing so well. Like, all of the characters in this show are written at least pretty well, but I think Ludo might be the best written, best realized character in the show. That bird will not shut up. I don't know if you guys can hear it or not, but it will not shut up today. I think Ludo might be the best written, best realized character in the show, and seeing his growth, even in such short, succinct little bursts like this, is just great. It's one of my favorite things about the series. It's also super interesting that this simple little episode about Ludo also manages to expand the lore of this show's multiverse, I guess you would say, in such an interesting way in the background of the episode. In fact, all 4 of the episodes that aired this week kind of do that, though to different degrees. This one's definitely one of the more interesting ones, though. The fourth and final of them, oh boy, I'm not going to talk about all of it in the review, but man, I could probably spend 30 minutes breaking down that episode. Still, it's interesting to know that if you go enough dimensions over, you'll eventually find one where things repeat like this. And we had seen something similar to this in a previous episode, but seeing that you can just access those dimensions like you access any other dimension is pretty interesting. And like, I know it was all in service of a spoof of the show itself and its characters, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. It's still canon. And it makes me wonder how many people out there are reliving Star's exact same struggle with minor differences. It kind of calls into question whether or not anything that Star does actually matters all that much. But that's a philosophical question, and I don't want to get into it. Still, it was super cool and made for a super funny opening sequence. Overall, this episode was just fantastic. It might be my favorite episode of the entire season so far, and it's actually pretty far up there on my list of favorite episodes of the series, too, now that I think about it. I certainly hope we get to see Ludo more this season so that his story can continue, because there's definitely places it could still go. Though, I would say, if this is where they leave Ludo's story with him chilling out with his family, actually having a healthy existence where they love and support each other, I'd be cool with that. I want to see more, but I don't need to anymore. As per usual, though, guys, I'd like to know, what did you think of Princess Quasar Caterpillar, yada yada yada? If you have seen it, let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.